So we will be going into chapter 11, Genesis chapter 11, and I'm going to read this to you. And the whole earth was of one language and of one speech. So one language and one speech, meaning that they thought the same and they spoke the same in that which they thought simultaneously. Meaning they all was not, there was a collective, there was no individuality. They were all of a collective consciousness to the point where whatever they thought was the same and whatever they spoke was the same. And it came to pass as they journeyed from the east that they found a plain in the land of Shinar, and they dwelt there. And they said one to another, Go to, let us make breath, burn them thoroughly, and they brick for stone, and slime they had for mortar. So they talked to themselves. Just imagine, like three Parthogenesis beings. And right when they spoke, they commanded, and they all said simultaneously, because they all thought this at the same time. Go to, let us make bread and burn them through it, and brick for stone, and slime they had for mortar. And they said again, Go to, let us build a city and tower to the top, may reach unto heaven. Let us make us a name, lest we be scattered abroad the face of the whole earth. They were all saying this and thinking this at the same time. And the Lord came down to see the city and the tower which the children of men builded. So these are the children of men, which are the Parthogenesis children. So these children are still Parthogenesis, but they grew up from childhood Parthogenesis. So they actually had a whole life of growing up because they are children. They were children. As I told you before, the other Parthogenesis beings didn't have a childhood. These Parthogenesis beings had a whole childhood. And the Lord said, Behold, the people is one, and they all have one language, and they all begin to do it. And now nothing will be restrained from them from which they have imagined to do. They all imagined the same exact thing. And here's again, Go to, let us down there, confound their language, that they may not understand one another's speech. You hear me? Go to, let us down, and there confound their language, that they may not understand one another's speech. So they asked simultaneously that they be separated in the consciousness, the mind, and the speech. So people be like, oh, and God did this. No. These beings that spoke the same thing decided that they don't want to think and speak the same thing. Because now they have imaginations, and they want to spread their imagination. They're like children. When they get to a certain age, children have the same thought at the same point of day till they get to another part. Then out of nowhere, children have what? Their own characteristics, their own personalities, and they all of a sudden have make their own individual choices. So they were growing up. That's all that meant. And the Lord scattered them abroad from thence upon the face of all the earth, and they left off to build the city. Therefore is the name of it called Babel, because the Lord did there confound the language of all the earth, and from thence did the Lord scatter them abroad the face of all the earth. They grew up. These are the generations of Shem. And Shem was 100 years old, and Shem unto Shem begat Arphaxad 2 years after the flood. And Shem lived 100 and begot Arphaxad 500 years, and begot sons and daughters. Now Shem had another Parthogenesis, Arphaxad, and then Arphaxad, after he had Arphaxad, he then had Shem, had sons and daughters. And Arphaxad lived 530 years, and begot Salah. And Arphaxad lived after he begot Salah 433 years, and then begot sons and daughters. So back then, the Parthogenesis being would first have a replicated self between the ages of 5 and 30. They would replicate themselves. And then after hundreds of years, they would have sons and daughters. And Salah lived 30 and begot Eber. And Salah lived after he begot Eber 433 years and begot sons and daughters. And Eber lived 430 years and begot Peleg. And Eber lived after he begot Peleg 430 years and begot sons and daughters. And Peleg lived 30 years and begot Reu. And Peleg lived after he begot Reu 209 years and begot sons and daughters. And Reu lived 230 years and begot Serug. And Reu lived after he begot Serug 270 years and begot sons and daughters. And Serug lived 30 years and begot Nahor. And Serug lived after he begot Nahor 230 years and begot sons and daughters. And Nahor lived 9 and 20 years and begot Terah. And Nahor lived after he begot Terah 119 years and then begot sons and daughters. And Terah lived 70 years. Now Terah, the others were 30. Terah, it took 70 years for Terah to have a baby unto Terah and begot Abram. But when he begot Abram, Nahor and Haran also came. So in the 70 years, Terah birthed 3 Parthogenesis beings. And these are the generations of Terah. Because Terah begot Abram, Nahor, and Haran. And Haran begot Lot. And Haran died before his father, Terah, in the land of nativity in the Ur of Chaldees. And Abram and Nahor took them wives. So one of the Parthogenesis being, and Abram took wives. So 2 Parthogenesis being took them wives. And name of Abram's wife was Sarah, and the name of Nahor's wife Milcah, the daughter of Haran, father of Milcah and father of Iscah. But Sarah was barren, she had no child. Parthogenesis took Sarah, who couldn't bear children. And Terah took Abram his son, and Lot the son of Haran his son's son, and Sarah his daughter-in-law, his son Abram's wife, and they went forth with them from Ur of the Chaldees to go into the land of Canaan, where they came unto Haran and dwelt there. And the days of Terah were 205 years, and Terah died in Haran. Terah died in Haran. Who is Haran? Haran is his son. He died in his son. And Haran died before his father Terah. And then Terah died in Haran. So there was a swapping here. Somebody had to swap out and make sure that these children were born. But he couldn't do that. It was something that stopped in Haran that stopped in Terah. What stopped in Haran that stopped in Terah? That was completely cut off. Parthogenesis. The Parthogenesis. Completely killed off. It died. And Sarah was shown barren. A female was barren. Therefore, the female aspect of all of them that were Parthogenesis became barren. The Tower of Babel is about the generations that broke down from collective conscious to individual nature. and how that broke down over the years from from male to female. Now they are becoming male to female. They have no choice. That's why they're taking wives, because they're barren within themselves. They can't growth. They don't. Their Parthogenesis effect is no longer affecting. They can't do it no more. So chapter 12. Now the Lord said unto Abram, Get thee out of thy country and from thy kindred and from thy father's house unto a land that I will show thee. Now that they cannot no longer have Parthogenesis unto self, if they stay with the others, they will be sleeping. It will become incestuous. You understand? It will become incestuous. Their bloodlines are so broken down that, and they cannot parthogenicize no more, to the point now where they stay in the same land with the same people. It'll be just like sleeping with your family member. We see this now. You stay in the same small ass town with the same individuals over generations of generations. You'll be dating your cousin and don't even know it. This is why knowing your family lineage and knowing the people of your family is so important. Because now in these small towns, incest is happening. You got cousins marrying cousins, don't even know they cousins. The bloodlines is weak now. You got to move out the area. When the bloodlines get weak like that, you can't stay in the same tribe and be having babies, or in the same small town and be having babies. You got to branch out. And I will make thee a great nation, and bless thee, and make thy name great, and thou shalt be a blessing. I will bless him and bless thee, and curse him that curseth thee. And thee shall all families of the earth be blessed. Now we're talking about the families of the earth. The families of the earth. Because you got to go out in the earth. So you're coming now with the families all over the place. So Abram departed as the Lord had spoken to him, and Lot went with him. And Abram was 75 years old when he departed out of Haran. Meaning that he was 75 and 5 years old when he could no longer parthogenesis. He could no longer birth unto himself. But he took his wife and Lot his brother's son and all the substance that they had gathered and the souls that they have gotten in Haran, and they went forth into the land of Canaan, and into the land of Canaan they came. So these non-parthogenesis beings they went out. They spread out. They left Africa. All the beings that needed to make further aspects apart, all of them left out of Africa. The blood had been broken down. And Abram took his wife and Lot, and Abram passed through the land unto the place of Shittim, unto the plain of Mark, and the Canaanite was then in the land. Now a Canaanite is of another son, Ham, another Parthogenesis being. And the Lord appeared unto Abram and said, Unto thy seed will I give this land, and there builded his altar unto the Lord who appeared unto him. And he removed thee from thence unto the mountain on the sea of Bethel, and pitched his tent, having Bethel at the west and Hai on the east. And there he built an altar unto the Lord, and called upon the name of the Lord. So now he has to build, he has to do something to channel the entity in. They're broken down. The blood's so broken down and thinned out. Now just getting in contact with the master was hard. You got to do stuff now to get in contact with him. And Abram journeyed going on still toward the south. And there was a famine in the land, and Abram went down into Egypt to sojourn there, and for the famine was grievous in the land. And it came to pass when he was come near to enter into Egypt, that he said unto Sarah his wife, Behold, now I know that thou art a fair woman to look upon. Therefore it come to pass when the Egyptians shall see thee, that they shall say, This is his wife. Now the Egyptians at this time and the Canaanites at this time were probably going through the same thing. They were no longer Parthogenesis beings. But this is about the Hebrew. Egyptian Kemetic will show you that at some point it became Isis, Osiris, who in the womb of one were Parthogenesis. And the Parthogenesis of Isis, Osiris, Set, and Nephthys was the Parthogenesis being that was dominant. But the Parthogenesis being then birthed a split. And the split was Isis and Osiris. They became two non-Parthogenesis beings. And Neth and Set were still Parthogenesis. They were wedded in the womb to where Anubis was born. Another Parthogenesis being. So, but Anubis brought death in the picture. Endings. So that was the last line of Parthogenesis being. Isis and Osiris, who died, gave birth to a child who was Horus, his incarnation. So now you got Horus, who is a non-Parthogenesis being, and Anubis, who is the last Parthogenesis being, whose Parthogenesis is died out. Like a flicker of a flame, it dies. But they're two different consciousnesses, two different aspects. So the feminine aspect no longer had the ability to self-replicate no more. They needed the phallic, the son, the daughters need the sons to now replicate themselves. They can't replicate themselves. The sons need the daughters, and the daughters need the sons. They can't replicate themselves no more without having sex, without taking a wife. They don't. In the male aspect, when y'all were Parthogenesis beings, y'all were able to do this because you could cultivate the seed in you. You were the herb yielding seed. And when she was a Parthogenesis being, when females were, we were the tree bearing seed. We could pop an egg out, have ourselves. Men could replicate themselves. We all had the Parthogenesis effect. But what happened was, in one aspect, it died out, and it became just sperm, and then you became a male. In the other aspect, it died out, and it became just ovaries, and you became a female. We no longer on both ends, no matter how you look at it, could self-replicate without having sex. And this was all over the land. This started all over the land. That's why when they was looking, they saw a woman. They go, "Oh my God, it's a woman. Oh my God, it's a fair woman. Oh my God, it's a woman. Let's pass out over a woman." And they will kill me, but they will save thee alive. They can't have babies. Say, "I pray thee, thou art my sister, and that it may be well with me for my sake, and my soul shall live because of thee." And it came to pass that when Abram was coming to Egypt, the Egyptians beheld the woman. She was very fair. This woman. And the princes also of Pharaoh saw her, and commended her before Pharaoh. And the woman was taken into Pharaoh's house, and he entreated Abram well for her sake. And he had sheep and oxen, and he had asses, and men servants, and maid servants, and she asses and camels. And the Lord plagued Pharaoh and his house with great plagues, because Sarah's Abram's wife. And Pharaoh called Abram and said, "What is this that you've done to me? Why did you not tell me that she was thy wife? Why sayest thou, she is my sister, so that I might take her to me as a wife? Now therefore behold thy wife, and take her and go away. And Pharaoh commanded his men concerning him, and they sent him away, and his wife, and all that he had. Abram knew that they didn't have that. All these women was popping up where you couldn't, they were barren. Most of them you couldn't. They had to be servants. They was only good for sex, but they weren't good for creation. That's because that's back then. The concubines was only good for sex, but they wasn't good to give birth, have children with. Most of them were barren, just And this woman, she was. You could tell she was. Something about her. There was something about her. But here's the thing: they couldn't have sex with her. They couldn't have sex with her. Because the moment they went to go have sex with her, this earthly master came in and plagued Pharaoh, the Lord, her Lord, her earthly master, a deity, came in and was like, "Nah, you're not worthy enough to be having sex with her." That's Abram's wife. He's already had sex with her. She can't procreate his kids. She's barren. Mm. And Abram went up out of Egypt, and he said to his wife that all he had, and Lot with him into the south. And Abram was very rich in cattle and silver and in gold. And he went to his journeys from the south, and even to Bethel, unto a place where his tent had been at the beginning, between Bethel and Hai. And unto the place of the altar which he had made there at the first, and there Abram called the name of the Lord. So he had to make an altar. An altar was a communications device to summon something. And Lot also went with Abram, had flocks and herds and tents. And the land was not able to hear them. Now look at this. Abram had to build the male aspect, had to build a energetic sequence of device, an altar, in order to get contact with the Lord. He had to build his connectivity, his receptivity. But Sarah was automatically in tune. Anything that lusted after her sacral energy could summon the Lord. She didn't need to build nothing for the Lord to plague Pharaoh. Pharaoh just popped up because she was female. Lord just popped up because she was a female. So she was automatically connected to a divine realm. Do you understand? The first female that has non-Parthogenesis was automatically connected to a divine being, a being that was a Lord, an earthly master, somebody who literally could change and terraform and do a lot of stuff to the earth. Whereas the male aspect had to concentrate, build something, and work. Yeah, right? And there came strife between the herdsmen and Abram's cattle and the herdsmen and Lot's cattle. And the land was able to near. Okay, let's go back. And unto the piece of the altar which he had made there at first, and Abram called out to the name of the Lord. He had to know the invocation to get this energy to come unto him as a male. So, in essence, men have to do a lot more. Males have to do a lot more, and they have to do a lot more in building and technique in order to connect to the divine. Women, the only thing a woman has to do is go within. Be scared. Pray. Anything. Divine's right there. And I'm going to show you what I mean. They might dwell together, their substance is great, so they could not dwell together. So Lot and Abram had too much, and they needed a lot of land. And there was strife between the herdsmen of Abram's cattle and the herdmen of Lot's cattle. The cows was taking up the land. And the Canaanite and the Perizzite dwelled then in the land. And Abraham said unto Lot, Let there be no strife, I pray thee, between me and thee, and between my herdmen and thy herdmen, for we be brethren. Now these were herdmen. And people go, well, what is so special about them being herdmen? These beings that were Parthogenesis before had sequencing of animal-like DNA. And the bipedal herdmen that we are talking about right now, Abram and them, were the men of cow. Egypt would have known them at that time as the children of Hathor. Hathor. So when they say herdmen, they're still talking about a different type of being. Okay. And Lot lifted up his eyes and beheld the plain of Jordan, and that was well watered, and ever before the Lord destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, even as the garden of the Lord, like the land of Egypt, that thou comest into Zoar. Then Lot chose him a plain of Jordan, and Lot journeyed east, and they separated themselves from one another. And Abram dwelt in the land of Canaan, Lot dwelt in the cities of the plain, and pitched his tent towards Sodom. So now they're out there with a different species of humans. Chilling. But the men of Sodom were wicked and sinners before the Lord exceedingly. They were nasty. And the Lord said unto Abram, after that Lot was separated from him, Lift up now thine eyes, look from the place there art northward and southward, eastward and westward. For all the land which thou seest to thee, I will give it, and to thy seed forever, and I will make thy seed as dust of the earth, so that if man can number the dust of the earth, then shall thy seed also be numbered. I will make thy seed as the dust of the earth, as Adam and Eve. Now your seed will be born just like Adam and Eve, separated from each other. But there will be many, and they will be full of seed. If a man can number the dust, if a man equates to the number of the dust of the earth, then your seed shall also be numbered. So you are man's seed. You are the children of men. But now, like man, you will be formated in the way that Adam commanded Eve to be within himself. Then Abram moved his tent and dwelt in the plain of Mamre, which is in Hebron, and built there an altar unto the Lord. He became a watcher, as he was the last Parthogenesis being. He was amongst the last. And it came to pass in the days of Ampharel, king of Sinar, Arioch, king of Asalar, Shedalar, Omar, king of Elam, and Tidal, king of nations. And these made war with Beder, king of Sodom, and with Bersha, king of Gomorrah, and Sinab, king of Admah, and Semebr, king of Zobeim, and the king of Bela, which is Zoar. And all these were joined together in the vale of Siddim, which is the salt sea. So the kings started to erect themselves around the Mediterranean area. In 12 years, They served Shalamur. In the 13th year, they rebelled. In the 14th year, Chedorlaomer and the kings that were with him, they smote the Rephims in Astoreth, Karnam and Zuzims in Ham, and the Emins in Saveh, Kiriathaim. So they started killing each other because there was nothing but a bunch of males. They all started killing each other. They all started erecting themselves as kings and then killing off the kings, and the kings started killing off the kings over here. The kings started killing off the kings over there. There's too many men. And they were and the Horites in the Mount Seir and El Paran, which is by the wilderness. And they returned to come to En Mashpat, which is in Kadesh, and smote all the country of the Amalekites, the Amalekites, and also the Amorites that dwelt in Nahazi and Tamar. And there went out the king of Saddam, and the king of Gomorrah, and the king of Admah, and the king of Zobeim, and the king of Bela, same is Zar, and they joined battle with them in the Vale of Siddim. So these males started to go out and kill other Parthogenesis nations of people. And with Shadadamanah and the king of Elam, the title king of nations, and Ephraim king of Sinar, and the Ariad king of Elasar, 4 kings with 5. The valley of Siddim was full of slime pits, and the kings of Sodom and Gomorrah fled and fell there, and that they remained fled to the mountains. They took all the goods of Sodom and Gomorrah and all their victuals, and went their way. And they took Lot, Abram's brother's son, who dwelt in Sodom, and his goods, and departed. And there came one that escaped and told Abram and the Hebrew, for he dwelt in the plain of Mahre and Amorite, brother of Eshcol, the brother of Anar, and these were confederate with Abram. And when Abram heard that his brother was taken captive, he armed his trained servants born in his own house, 318, and pursued them unto Dan. Now, how can Abram bore anything if Sarah's barren? Just start popping out males. Why? Because in the old heads, boys are born in time of war. So all of them was just having boys. Shit ton of boys. And all of them was erecting themselves as kings. And all of them was going around doing stuff. And he divided himself against them, he and his servants, by night, and smote them and pursued them unto Hobah, which is the left hand of Damascus. And he brought back all the goods, and brought again his brother Lot and his goods, and the women also, and the people. Got some women. And the king of Sodom went out to meet him after his return from the slaughter of Chedorlaomer, and the kings that were with him at the valley of Saval, which is the king Del, and the Melchizedek king of Salem, brought forth bread and wine, and he was a priest of the Most High God. And he blessed him. So this is the Melchizedek king of Salem, who worships with bread and wine of the Most High God. And he was a priest of El Shaddai, which is another deity, Elohim. This Melchizedek was a priest of the Elohim Shaddai, because Most High means Elohim Shaddai. That's another thing people don't know if you don't read Hebrew. And he blessed him and said, Blessed be Abram of the Most High God, possessor of heaven and earth. Blessed be the Most High God, which hath delivered thine enemies into thy hand, and gave him titles of all. And the king of Sodom unto Abram, Give me the persons and take the goods to thyself. And Abram said to the king of Sodom, I have lifted up my hand unto the Lord and the Most High God. So now he serves 2 masters. He serves Elohim Shaddai and the Lord, which now are the entities that are the possessors of now heaven and earth, that I will not take from the thread and the shoelace, and that I will not take anything that is thine, lest thou should say, I have made Abram rich. He said, I'm not going to take anything because I don't want you to take credit and to make me rich. Save only that when young men have eaten the portion of the men which are with me. I will not take anything until they all have their portion. I know Escobar and let them take their portion. So I want to share, since you are sharing your God with me, and I am sharing my God with you, my master, my Lord, earthly master, and you are showing me your Elohim, and they have now come in agreement. Now think about this. This Elohim and this Lord have come into agreement. So if they sharing, if their gods is sharing, then we're going to share. We're going to share the wealth. So give my people their portion, and then we'll talk about that whole, thank you. So after these, the word of the Lord came unto Abram in a vision, saying, Fear not, Abram. I am thy shield and thy exceedingly great reward. And the Lord, and Abram said, Lord God. Now he's referring to his two. What wilt thou give me, seeing I go childless, and the steward of my house is Eleazar of Damascus? And Abram said, Behold, to me thou hast given no seed, and lo, one born in the house of mine heir. I have no seed, but I'm a married man, so I'm supposed to have a seed. I'm supposed to be able to plant something in somewhere other than myself, and something's supposed to come forth. I have not that. I have not a son. I'm just replicating myself. And he brought him forth the broad and said, Look now toward the heaven, tell the stars, that thou be able to number them. And he said unto him, So thou shalt thy seed be. Don't worry about it. And he believed me and believed in the Lord, and he counted it for his righteousness. And he said unto him, I am the Lord that brought thee out of Ur and the Chaldees to give thee land to inherit. Remember what I did for you. Remember my power. And the Lord God, whereby I know that I shall inherit it. And he said unto him, Take me an heifer of 3 years old, and the she goat of 3 years old, and the ram of 3 years old, and the turtle dove, and the young pigeon. And so he took unto him all these things, and divided them in the midst, and laid each piece one against another, but the birds divided he not. And when the fowls came down upon the carcasses, Abram drove them away. And when the sun was going down, a deep sleep fell upon Abram, and lo, a horror of great darkness fell upon him. So he said, Go get me a certain set of species. Now what's the species he asked Abram to go get? A heifer, a goat, a turtle, a dove, a ram, and a pigeon. And some birds, some fowls. And he said, okay. Lay him down, kill him. And then what happened? What happened? A deep sleep fell upon him. And great darkness fell upon him. When's the last time that deep sleep fell upon Abram? He was put out of his being, put into an uncreated state, and then tampered with scientifically to make Eve. The same thing just happened to Abram. And he said unto Abram, Know of it surely that thy seed shall be a stranger in the land that is not theirs, and shall serve them, and shall be afflict them for 400 years. So a new species was introduced. And it will be it will be something different. People will be like, ooh, what is that? And it should be oppressed for 400 years because nobody will understand what the fuck it is. And also, that nation whom they shall serve I will judge, and afterwards they shall come out with great sustenance. And they shall go to their fathers in peace, and thou shalt be buried in good old age. But the fourth generation they shall come hither again, for the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet full. And it will come to pass when the sun went down and it was dark, beholding the smoke furnace and the burning lamp that passed between those pieces. And in the same day the Lord made a covenant with Abraham, saying, Unto thy seed I have given this land and the great river of Egypt, and the Euphrates, and the Canaanites, and the Kenites, and the Kadmonites, and the Hittites, and the Perizzites, and the Rephaims, and the Amorites, and the Canaanites, and the Girgashites, and the Jebusites. So he took the DNA of the people of the land and then incorporated it into his seed. So what we're talking about here in Genesis 11 through 16, we're talking about the humanoids. Those that were damn near close to being like us. And still weren't like us. We haven't gotten down to what we are yet. And we're in Genesis 16. We're going into Genesis 16. And we're talking about the DNA splicing of birds and fowl and goats and stuff to create a new being. So if we are talking about, if this Lord God is using the geneticism of animals and things to create, then what is the Parthogenesis beings between chapter 10 and chapter 15? Humanoids. Blood is still being broken down. Now we know this because when we study evolution of the human, the Darwinism and stuff like that, we know we were like primates, blah 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 blah. Well, it didn't mean that they were not. What European history is stating is that they were retarded. You were at one point so retarded you couldn't have built shit. But the truth of it is, we were humanoids. And we came from Parthogenesis humanoids that came from Parthogenesis beings that were different. Some of them had to learn how to grow up from a childlike state. They were, and some of them never had a childhood. And some of them came from dust and split themselves in some type of weird deity surgical proceedings. So we still haven't gotten. Everybody's talking about the Genesis don't make no sense. We ain't even at what we are yet. We haven't, the DNA sequencing has not yet gotten down to what we are yet. The Homo sapiens sapien. So we're talking about getting to the Homo sapiens sapien, but not from a Darwin's theory. We didn't come from unintelligent. We were highly intelligent. And we de-evolved in our intelligence. So we right now are the de-evolved intellectual intelligent versions of the past. We're not as smart as the past. We're actually dumber. But physicality wise, we're more refined. Well, actually not. We have no protection. The only thing that we have protecting us is physical strength and intelligence. But the truth to that is the only thing that we have protected us in our de-evolved form is weapons. Mind you, ain't none of them building weapons. We had to start building weapons because at some point this vessel, our experiences is now to the point where we can't protect ourselves without having a gun or a knife. We're physically weakened. We're spiritually weaker in this day and age. Some of y'all can't build an altar and some of nothing. You think you can because you're getting drunk and high and deluding yourself, but you can't summon nothing of a higher power. Some women is earthbound, their prayers ain't going nowhere. The womb is giving birth to lesser than whatever they were. But But this is where we're coming into what the species of the chosen will be oppressed for 400 years. The chosen in American Day Society is black people. But black Americans are not the same species as every other human or race of being on the planet. They have the creatrix energy. They have the creatrix energy in them to be under a semblance of like Parthogenesis being. But it is getting snuffed out. It will, if we don't nurture it, if we don't nurture that light as black American people, it will die. And will be lesser than in our generations to come. And we will be just like majority of the earth. So if all the majority of the earth is becoming a lesser than, and the light is getting snuffed out the earth, then we will continually de-evolve. That means that this whole happening of a bunch of autistic and ADHD children is showing us what's happening. Generations of generations to come will not have the sense to even know how to have babies. And they will just die off. If we don't become violent in some of, but we know what happens when they get to where they just start conking each other the head, and you know what's gonna happen. They're gonna get destroyed. Everything's gonna get destroyed. So what's happening here is we're de-evolving. This is showing us to de-evolve, and it's showing us that every now and then we put an evolutionary leap to help us evolve before we de-evolve. We will learn as we study the Bible that there are always beings in place to help us evolve out of the state that we're in, because if we continue on the journey that we're going to, we will not exist. No, this earth will completely be barren.